He found himself out of a job a few months ago simply for daring to ask the pertinent questions regarding the conflict in Gaza. A stalwart in the alternative information sphere, he possesses an intricate understanding of Middle Eastern and African politics. His prominence rose to international acclaim when he dismantled an anti-Islamic scholar at Oxford, his alma mater, during a profoundly impactful debate that reverberated worldwide. His tenure with Al Jazeera and subsequent representation of the Palestinian cause, including appearances on platforms like ours at the Open-Minded Thinker Show, further solidified his reputation. However, the recent release of a video by this esteemed scholar has caused a seismic stir on the internet, prompting major media outlets to scramble to suppress it from mainstream circulation. This video serves as one of the most compelling rebuttals to the falsehoods perpetuated and justified by Israeli authorities in Gaza, ostensibly to support their escalating efforts to render the enclave uninhabitable. What captivated us in this presentation was the exposure of the fallacy that Gaza was peaceful before the Palestinian resistance mounted its defensive actions. Indeed, the evidence presented by Hassan in this meticulously crafted video left us astonished, leading us to regret not giving it the widespread recognition it deserves earlier. As such, this video serves as a belated acknowledgement of our oversight. Our aim is to clandestinely disseminate the video, ensuring it reaches every corner and crevice of those who harbor doubts about the justifiability of Palestinian resistance against occupation. This video is nothing short of monumental, brimming with irrefutable evidence to dismantle the fabrications and manipulations employed by Zionists to garner global sympathy while perpetrating what can only be described as genocidal military actions. Our commitment to delivering impartial news and geopolitical insights remains unwavering. We implore you to engage with our content by liking and sharing this video, thereby staying abreast of developments in Palestine. Subscribe for timely updates on related events.
Israeli officials have told so many lies since October the 7th with so little pushback from the media that it's hard to keep up. So here from Zeteo is the first in a new segment we're calling Debunked. The top 7 lies about Gaza debunked. Lie number 1. There was already a ceasefire on October the 6th, and Hamas broke it. You see it said everywhere by Benjamin Netanyahu, by Hillary Clinton. They all say it, and yet it's completely false. Just 2 weeks before October the 7th, Israeli airstrikes hit Gaza for the 3rd day in a row. And on October the 4th, Gaza Strip protesters received bullet wounds to ankles, medics report. Does that sound like a ceasefire to you? Even over in the occupied West Bank, before Hamas's attack on October the 7th, Israeli forces had already killed a record 234 Palestinians. If there was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th, nobody told the Israeli military. Lie number 2. The priority is freeing the hostages. There's no higher priority, Joe Biden has said. And yet, last month, Israel's finance minister said bringing home the hostages is not the top priority. Hamas must be defeated.
We resonate deeply with the sentiments expressed in this submission. When the events of October 7th unfolded, we at the Open-Minded Thinker Show discerned that it was a bitter reaction to the ongoing killings within the blockaded Gaza Strip. As avid followers of Middle East news, particularly concerning the Holy Land, we were taken aback by claims suggesting peace prevailed in the Strip before Palestinian soldiers retaliated. However, upon closer examination, it became evident that there was no ceasefire in place. The conflict persisted, albeit with reduced intensity following the Palestinian counteroffensive. Israel, aware of the sympathetic portrayal it often receives in the global media, particularly in the Western world, sought to manipulate the narrative. They employed spin tactics, even distorting events on the ground. While we unequivocally condemn all acts of violence hindering peace in Palestine, we also denounce the IDF's deliberate targeting of its own people to escalate tensions in the aftermath of Palestinian military actions within occupied Palestine. Authentic reports, including those acknowledged by Israel itself, confirm such occurrences. Yet mainstream media largely refrains from criticizing the occupation for its deceitful justifications, further perpetuating the disregard for human rights in Gaza. One poignant observation is that the media's inherent bias and reluctance to address the plight of Gaza's inhabitants have emboldened the occupation, fostering a determination to perpetrate atrocities while thwarting any attempts at achieving a ceasefire and lasting peace in the conflict. The media's failure to challenge the narratives propagated by figures like Benjamin Netanyahu grants him the audacity to persist on the path of war, instead of pursuing peaceful resolutions to end the decade-long plight endured by the region.
Wittingly or unwittingly, the Israeli military has actually killed more Israeli hostages than its soldiers have rescued. In fact, as one Israeli journalist recently tweeted, citing new reporting from an Israeli news website, 10 hostages were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, some even as the Israeli military had intel they were residing in the buildings that were targeted. The IDF reportedly killed their own citizens and then lied and said they died in, quote, Hamas captivity. But sure, it's all about the hostages. Lie number 3, 40 beheaded babies. How can we forget the most emotive and most offensive lie of this entire conflict? A lie that went viral and was repeated by the President of the United States, who falsely said he saw pictures of beheaded babies, even though there weren't any. Nor were their babies burned in ovens, as Israeli newspaper Haaretz proved in their investigation. They were all lies. In fact, according to data released by Israel's Social Security Agency, tragically there was one baby killed on October the 7th, 10-month-old Mila Cohen, may her memory be a blessing. But in the interests of facts, she was not beheaded. Now, one baby killed is one baby too many, a tragedy, a crime. But 40 beheaded babies is just a cynical, reckless, repulsive lie that was then used to justify the killing of hundreds of Palestinian babies. Lie number 4, there was a Hamas base underneath the Al-Shifa hospital. Remember this video from the Israeli military claiming Hamas's main headquarters were under the hospital? Wow, an underground lair straight out of a Bond movie. To this day, we have yet to see any evidence of such a headquarters under Al-Shifa. Sure, as the AP has reported, the Israelis found a pair of metal cots in a room fashioned from rusty white tile. They appeared to be out of use. Meanwhile, the Washington Post said the underground rooms found by Israel showed no immediate evidence of military use by Hamas, and Israel has provided no hard evidence that Hamas was using the hospital as a command and control center. The Israeli military lied so that they could attack more hospitals under the same false pretext. Lie number 5, you can't trust the Hamas health ministry. Remember what Israeli spokesman Mark Regev said to me on Peacock back in November? The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 11,000 people in Gaza, including a record number
the Hamas
of children.
controlled.
Let me finish my question.
You can't say that. No, but you said you have to say the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza.
I don't have to say what you asked me to say. Why mention Hamas-controlled every time? Because you can't trust the health ministry's numbers, right? Except the Israeli military does. The Israeli military has secretly found the Gaza Health Ministry's casualty figures to be reliable and even uses those numbers for its own intelligence briefings. Oh, and the world's most famous medical journal, The Lancet, found no evidence of inflated mortality reporting from the Gaza Ministry of Health. Lie number 6, there is no hunger in Gaza. That is an exact quote from an Israeli defense official. And it's a lie, obviously. Ask the parents of poor Mahmoud Fatou, the 2-month-old baby who starved to death recently in Gaza. According to the World Food Programme, 4 out of 5 of the hungriest people in the world right now are in Gaza. And lie number 7, the Gazans getting killed today elected Hamas. They voted for them. Put aside for one moment the bin Ladenist logic that says if you vote a way I don't like, I get to kill you. It's just not true that Gazans elected Hamas. It's a lie. Half of the population of Gaza are kids under the age of 18. Most of them weren't even born when the last elections in Gaza took place nearly 2 decades ago. And even in those 2006 legislative elections, Hamas didn't win a majority of the votes cast in Gaza.
The issue of Israel's detainee rescue has become increasingly complex since the onset of the crisis. We echo Hassan's assessment that the Israeli operation appears to be operating outside the scope of hostage rescue intentions within the war context. Furthermore, the rapid declaration of war by Netanyahu left us astonished, suggesting a preconceived battle plan even before the Palestinian offensive. It seems evident that while the occupying government maintained stringent control over the Strip's economic, social, and political aspects, it had already formulated plans to wage war on the Palestinian stronghold. Reports have surfaced indicating instances where Israel covertly funded the Palestinian resistance, aiming to sow discord and prevent unity with other parts of Palestine, thereby perpetuating a division that hampers the realization of a Palestinian state. Such allegations gain credence, particularly considering Netanyahu's reluctance to entertain peace initiatives that might jeopardize Israel's complete access to purported natural gas resources in Gaza. Speculation suggests that the crisis is intricately tied to the control of these natural gas reservoirs, abundant in Palestinian shores, and for the occupation to assert full dominance over the area, a war allegedly had to be initiated. While these assertions remain speculative, it is prudent to acknowledge the complexity of the crisis. Without a comprehensive resolution, the risk of a recurrence of events akin to October 7th remains distressingly high.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today. Let's start with the tragic situation. Pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the tragic situation of the hostages. Hostage taking, a clear war crime by Hamas, and those hostages, of course, need to be released. Are we any closer to the release of any more hostages?
We surely hope so. You know, Hamas, as you've reported, has kidnapped some 240 people. Unfortunately, today we found the body near the Shifa hospital of one of the hostages, a woman from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her name is Yehudit Weiss. She was 65 years old, a mother of 5. And so she's no longer a hostage. She was dead. The information we have is when she was taken into captivity, when she was abducted by Hamas, she was alive. We've now found her body. It was one of the results of the military operation today. Of course, getting the hostages out remains one of the focal points of our military operation. And we believe that by expediting the military pressure on Hamas, we're actually getting closer to the release of hostages.
So was it a mistake in hindsight, and that's tragic news to hear about this poor woman, was it a mistake for Prime Minister Netanyahu, your boss, to have reportedly turned down a deal at the start of this conflict that would have seen Hamas free women, the elderly, kids, in exchange for a 5-day ceasefire? Isn't that why so many of the families of the hostages are angry with your government?
Sorry, Mehdi, that's just disinformation. There was not a real option for a deal before the ground operation. It was looked at seriously, but Hamas put nothing on the table that could be worked with. And so that's just not correct to say there was an option. We might have an option now for a deal. I can't tell you for sure. We might have an option because the military pressure on Hamas is maybe making Hamas understand that if they want a temporary ceasefire, they need to release hostages. Without that, we're not going to have a temporary ceasefire. We're hitting Hamas hard, and maybe the military pressure will force them to consider how they look at the hostages. Look, we can't expect them to release hostages because they're suddenly going to become humanitarians, right, Mehdi? They're obviously not. They're brutal, vicious terrorists. And they'll only release hostages when they're only release hostages when they're forced to do so.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the military pressure. We are nearly 6 weeks into this bombing campaign and ground invasion. The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 11,000 people in Gaza, including a record number of children. Let me finish my question.
No, but you can't say that. No, but you said you have to say the Hamas controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza.
I don't have to say what you asked me to say. More than 4,000 kids, they say.
That's true. You don't deny that, Mehdi. You don't deny that it's the Hamas controlled.
I'm not
denying. And the health ministry is controlled by Hamas.
Let me finish my question.
You can, but please tell the viewers the truth. That information is provided by Hamas.
Okay, and that information, we'll come back to that information, but you've got dead Gazans. The American government say maybe more than 11,000. You've got a record number of journalists killed, according to the CPJ, a record number of UN workers killed, according to the UN, and yet Hamas still exists, is still capable of firing rockets into Israel, still has the hostages. You haven't found their big base under the Shifa hospital either. Your critics say that shows this war is a failure.
I would argue that's all incorrect, Mehdi. We're hitting Hamas hard and they're feeling the pain. We just discussed that a moment ago. Why they may be now considering seriously a hostage release. It's not because, as I said, they've become humanitarians. It's because they're under a very, very massive military pressure. Look, this operation is not one that we wanted, obviously. This war was forced upon Israel in the terrible attack of October 7th. And we are fighting back and we will destroy Hamas. we'll dismantle their military machine, and we'll take apart their political control of Gaza. That's good for Israel for obvious reasons. We don't have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the border and killing our people, butchering our children in the middle of the night. But it's ultimately also good, and I hope you agree with me, it'll be good for the people of Gaza, who deserve better than this terrible, authoritarian, extreme Hamas regime.
The people of Gaza are still alive. As I say, more than 11,000 people dead, reported dead, 4,000 children. I just want to pull up on the screen.
Hamas's numbers.
You say Hamas's numbers. I should point out, just pull up on the screen, in the last two major Gaza conflicts, 2009 and 2014, the Israeli military's death tolls matched Hamas's health ministry death toll. So, and the UN human rights groups all agree that those numbers are credible. But look, your wider point is true.
Can I challenge that? Will you allow me to challenge that, please? Can I just challenge that? I'd like to challenge that. I'll try to be as brief as you are, sir. Those numbers are provided by Hamas. There's no independent verification. And secondly, more importantly, you have no idea how many of them are Hamas terrorists, combatants, and how many are civilians. Hamas would have you believe that they're all civilians, that they're all children. And here we have to say something that isn't said enough. Hamas, until now, we're destroying their military machine, and with that, we're eroding their control. But up until now, they've been in control of the Gaza Strip. And as a result, they control all the images coming out of Gaza. Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Is that by accident, or is that because Hamas can control the information?
You asked me a question and you
Gaza.
said you would be brief. I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point, Mehdi. They're the pictures Hamas wants.
But they're also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Okay, here's my question for you, Mark. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
I disagree, and I think on the important issues, look, I'll give you an example, Mehdi. Originally, we estimated... No, I'm answering your question. Allow me to answer your question. I'm answering your question directly, if you'll allow me. We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties, and now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake, we admit it.
Short on time.
Why does that give you permission? Why does that give you permission to accept Hamas's numbers? I don't understand.
I didn't ask about Hamas's numbers. I said to you that your military...
No, but you were quoting to me Hamas numbers.
That video may have been recorded several months ago, but its impact on the overall mood surrounding the crisis remains both fresh and profound. While Hassan Mahdi's interview led to his cancellation at MSNBC, its relevance persists amidst the dangerous propaganda that has characterized the crisis since October 7. It's evident that the media machinery of the occupation fears genuine, honest journalism. They're accustomed to the type of whitewashed reporting that perpetuates the illusion of safety for the occupation, even as it blatantly violates international law. None of the major media outlets bothered to inquire about the situation in Gaza prior to October 7th. So fixated are they on portraying the occupation as a democracy while demonizing those who resist the usurpation of their ancestral lands. Hassan Mahdi struck precisely where it matters, showcasing his astute analysis of the occupation's propaganda machinery.
This is one of the thorniest questions of our time when it comes to the left, Biden, Trump, and Gaza. Look, all right. This is a careful one to navigate, because this is not some abstract issue, is it, Michael? There are people who are really hurting. There are people here in America, Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans, who say, we cannot vote for Joe Biden. We've lost not 10, not 20, not 30, 40, 50, 60 members of our family in Gaza. And of course, how could anyone say to that person, you should vote like this? That's just a given. What Biden has done is unprecedented in the sense of what Israel has done is unprecedented and America has backed it. So in that sense, what he's done is unprecedented. Again, unfortunately, we live in a two-party system. And we have to understand that if it's not Biden, then it's Trump. If it's not Biden, it's Cornel West or Marianne Williamson. If it's not Biden, it's Donald Trump. And I would like, I've met people who claim, and I believe wrongly claim, that if Donald Trump was president, things wouldn't be as bad right now. That's nonsense. You don't have to normalize or minimize Donald Trump's awfulness in order to criticize Joe Biden. I can say very happily that Joe Biden is complicit in an awful genocide. And in a perfect world, he would be politically punished because we'd have many more choices. But the reality is Donald Trump, as president of the United States, was horrifically pro-Israel. In fact, you could argue, as Rashid Khalid does, that Biden is the most pro-Israeli president of our lifetimes. But guess who the most pro-Israeli president before Joe Biden was? Donald Trump. Right? Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Donald Trump has a settlement. Many people don't know this. In the Golan Heights in occupied Syria, named after him. Right? Donald Trump is the only American president who has an illegal settlement named after him. That's how much the far right in Israel love him. In fact, you'd have to take my word for it. Itamar Ben-Gvir, perhaps the worst member of Netanyahu's government, who this week was celebrating the Flower Massacre in northern Gaza. He has said on the record that if Donald Trump was in office, we would have much more freedom to do what we want to do. Those are not my words. Those are Ben-Gvir's words. So when I say Donald Trump would be worse for the Palestinians than even Joe Biden, I'm not just saying that as a kind of opinion. I'm saying that's what the Israelis believe. Now, and this is what I say to people. Nobody's telling you to vote for Joe Biden. I wouldn't tell people how to vote. What I would say is bear in mind the fact that Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir are waiting for a Trump president. There's no debate.
His insights dealt a significant blow to the fabric of lies peddled by the occupation to justify its brutal military campaigns in Gaza. Presently, the narrative is shifting, with voices like Hassan's gaining traction as the world awakens to the atrocities committed in Gaza. It's increasingly acknowledged that an occupying force cannot claim self-defense against the occupied. In truth, it is the resistance that holds the legitimate right to defend itself against the oppression and machinations of the occupation. Thank you for your attention. We urge you to share and like this news update with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest developments from Palestine. Until our next update, peace.